Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Accuracy in America, brought to you by Accuracy in Academia. I am your host, Don Irvine, joined by my co-host, Brian McNichol.
Hello, deplorables, dregs, despicables, chumps, Neanderthals, semi-fascists, people in need of reprogramming, and dog-faced pony soldiers.
Yeah. I'm glad that we have liberals are always giving us stuff,
Yeah, tell us how much we need to be reprogrammed. Like we're the ones who did the drag shows in schools. No, that was not us, right? That was someone else. But we're the ones who need to be reprogrammed.
Yeah, it's always amazing to me. I mean, all of this stuff, you can take all the things that we mention at the beginning of the program every time, and then anything else you want to add in there. But it's always us, right? It's
Yeah,
never them. It's always us.
right.
It just
Hey, we're arguing facts. They're arguing personalities. I mean, if you get down to it, because like I was in some of the couple of like Twitter discussions this weekend, uh, and these people they have these elaborate case they want to make against Trump. They're like, oh, the inflation was actually worse then. Well, no, it wasn't. Actually there was more unemployment. No, there wasn't. Right. And you get down to the end of it, and it's like they just don't like him. Right. It's just personal. It's just daddy's telling me what to do and I'm done with daddy's authority or something like that. It's like you can't, they try to argue about the immigration. It's like, no, immigration was in pretty good shape and now is a disaster. And what changed? We got a new president who changed the rules. Right. So it's like they will make these elaborate excuses. And now like this Biden stuff keeps coming out, like he's got all these payments coming and that was a loan to his brother. It's like, don't you ever loan your brother $200,000? No, I didn't really ever do that. Right? Why does my brother need a $200,000 loan? You know what I mean? So I don't know. And you're talking about a guy, he, in theory, did not make $200,000 a year when he was making this loan. So he was loaning more money than he earns in a year. But that's okay.
All right, we're going to get to that in a minute then, because I didn't have it down there, but it did strike me as I was looking at something that we probably ought to have a little discussion about that. But before that, I have to do the weather report here because the weather turned. Now I mean, it's not surprising. I mean, this is more fall-like weather, but it got a little nippy. When I go out to the gym at leave the house at 4:40. And it's 37, 35, 37 degrees. It's a little cold. I'm glad we didn't have frost on the windshield because I hadn't prepared for that. So I'm happy with that. But it's like, where in the heck is my puffy jacket? I should have been looking for that last night.
Yeah, it's windy too. It's a wall of cold, icy, wintry wind too. So it's like a winter day out there. A high only be about 50 degrees here, and that's not atypical for January or February here. Yeah. So there's a lot more room on the golf course now. You can just roll right up there and put your ball on the ground and start whacking them, man, because no one's there anymore. But yeah, it did change, and they're starting to revise some of these weather forecasts and say, hey, heads up, guys, it could be some snow around here this year. So I've lived here. I moved here in 88. So this will be the 35th winter I've spent in DC. And of those 35 winters, eight of them, Shreveport got more snow than we did, including last winter. So I think we're going to beat Shreveport this time. I think we're going to have more than them.
Yeah, I mean, didn't they get a bunch of snow in Denver this past weekend too?
Yeah, and I don't know if you watched any of that. There was a football game on last night at Central Michigan, which is Mount Pleasant, Michigan. And at one point, they were playing Northern Illinois, and the Northern Illinois kicker missed a field goal. And the announcer's like, you can't blame him for missing it. He cannot see the goal because the snow is so heavy, right? And it was like those, it was like torn up bedding falling from the sky. It wasn't even, it was big, huge flakes. So, it's here. It's coming at us like a bad dream.
Yeah, so I follow a weather forecast, a meteorologist. She's done some spots on CNN and everything like that, but mainly because she's come out there as a kind of a Christian dog mom type of thing like that. So I always feel that people like that need to be supported. But she's got a regular gig apparently right now in somewhere in Ohio, and she was reporting, that they were starting to get that wintry mix kind of a thing like that. And you're like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's November. I mean, there are colder parts of the country. It's like, but this is kind of an ominous warning for what could happen, as we move east and things like that. It's just, Ohio it's a little too close for comfort. When I start seeing snow in November, it's like, what's
Yeah.
going to be? I may actually have to break out the snow blower that my son gave me last year, and
Yeah,
I probably should take it out of the box and charge the battery up and just be ready, or something.
Yeah. My son, his football team is unbeaten. They're 9-0. So they're looking at a deep playoff run, which part of me is like, yay, go team. And part of me is like, man, it's going to be cold. Like Friday night, it's supposed to be in the 30s for their last regular season game. So, they're teaching us to bundle up over there. The other thing is November 1st marks the end of hurricane season, right? You don't get it. We've never had an Atlantic hurricane after November 1st. So what did we have this year? We had one that was in the Pacific, and then one that was on the Pacific side of that's just been the last few days or a week or so down in Mexico. Acapulco got hit, which is a Pacific beach community. So, I don't think any hit the United States, right? Did any hurricane hit the United States this year?
I don't remember. I mean, we didn't get all that, media reports about all the damage and destruction this time around. As far as nothing stands out in my mind as being particularly
right. Wildfires. That was a very calm wildfire season. Plenty of rain and snow runoff, and enough water to get California out of drought. So like the next time the global warming people crank it up again, it's more storms and they're more severe. Well, no, they're not. It's not really true. So it's something to think about. Others, they talk about, we have one of the hottest months ever this summer, right? But last winter we had one of the coldest months ever. So, weather is weird. Like we don't really understand it, which is why we should avoid big prescriptive policy on it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, I need to know about your. This is the inside baseball knowledge of Montgomery County playoff system, but I don't. I saw. I guess it was on. What's it, Moco Show or whatever it is, one of these sites that's local to Montgomery County, and they posted like the state football playoffs. And so I took a brief look at this, and I've paid very little attention to this over the last many years. I mean, my kids have been out of school for a number of years and things like that. But I looked at this and I just thought, wow, it seems that the county, and maybe this is the statewide thing now, is that it seems a little bit like like the pros, that the number of teams that can make the playoffs has expanded greatly.
Yeah.
I don't remember seeing this. Montgomery County had a whole bunch of teams in there, and like it seemed like they had more than one team at each class level, and I'm like, what is going on here? So as far as I mean, I don't know how closely you follow any of these things, but has that been something that's been happening on the high school level in general? Is that they think, oh well, we need to expand the playoff system for the kids?
Maryland, when I was a sports editor up there in the late 90s, they had it was you only had to win 3 games to win the state championship. 3 playoff games, and you were state champ.
Right.
In Maryland, you only have about 47 or so high schools per class. There's 4 classes, that goes on enrollment, and they cut it right down the middle. And they'll pinch a little one way or the other if it messes up geographical boundaries. If you're the biggest school in class 2 and it makes more sense to stay in your class 3 district, a lot of times they'll make a one for one switch just to make it convenient. But for the most part, they stick to the enrollment. And so now they've gotten to where it's 4 games to win it. So they've added a round of playoffs in Maryland. So a whole lot, with 45 teams, you're really not the state championship of a whole lot, right? So, you put in too many, you've really cheapened it a lot. You've done,
Yeah.
all over the state.
Yeah.
So there's 4 regions. So I think it's, what would that mean? You would need 32 teams.
Yeah, I mean, I just kind of took a brief look, and it's like Class 4A East and West and all this kind of stuff. I'm like, okay, everything is just very different from my old days, and when I used to do stringing for the high school team and for the Post and stuff like that. So it's just like, but it is, when they do this, whether or not it's something like this or goes up to the person, I just say, it's such a dilution, because it's like you take a high percentage of the schools around. It's like, well, there's like, I don't know. It's to me, it's not as special anymore when you throw that many teams into the mix. But
right, I go both ways on that one. Last year, like my son's team, they missed by 0.01 points of making the playoffs. So that was very painful, and all these kids they relied on this. This is all he does, right? He gets out of school, he goes to practice, he drags in here almost 7 o'clock at night. And he's not a lot of trouble. When they're that tired, they don't get in much trouble, right?
Yeah.
You just sort of lay down and look at the TV. But he's also got good grades, so he's obviously doing something besides laying down and looking at the TV. But so you take this away, and you change people's lives. So I think it keeps everyone. And the other thing is, it happens in football. You get late in the season, you get teams that know they're not going to make the playoffs. This is a sport where you can seriously hurt people, right? So you start getting people who they don't really care about, trying to win the games anymore, because it's not going to do them any good. So other motivations get in there. And so the notion of keeping everybody with a chance at the playoffs longer in the season, I don't think is a terribly bad idea. And I don't think it costs the state a whole lot of money to have one more week of playoffs. So,
it could even make them more money. I mean, I think money is a partial motivation. I mean, these things do. These are one of the few revenue generating sports, in the school system.
Yeah, and it's interesting because in Maryland, I don't think other states do it quite this way, but in Maryland, the state playoffs, all the ticketing and all the money goes to MPSSAA, Maryland Public School Secondary Athletic Association, which is the LHSAA in Louisiana, Virginia High School League here. It's the state governing body of public school teams, right? Some of the states have private school teams that come under that, but in Maryland, it's only public schools. The private schools have their own leagues. So they have, I forgot what point I was going to make, but they sell 4,000. They say, 4,000 tickets per game, right? So if you go to a playoff game, there's more than 4,000 tickets. The home team gets all that money, right? Because there's nowhere to put it, right? The state gave you 4,000 tickets. You let 4,000 in. If anybody else comes up there, you don't owe the visiting team money. Like in the regular season, you owe the visiting team a cut of the crowd, right? But not in the playoffs, right? So if you ask them, I used to ask them, how many people do you think were there that game? And they'd go, 4,000, Brian. And I'd say, oh, there was a lot more than Brian. There were 4,000 people at that game. Do you understand? Because we know this because we sold 4,000 tickets, right? So the other money, you don't need to know about all that. So it was pretty interesting deal that they did in Maryland.
Yeah, I mean, I remember my old high school days of just watching our team just barely miss at times, And you're like, under this system, I think they would have been in the playoffs a lot more. Who knows how they would have done? But it just, there's something to be said on both sides of that. Bob had a little comment about our backing up the hurricane.
That's right. There. Good time to live in Slidell, where Bob lives.
Yeah.
Right. Hurricane Alley. It was a warm summer down there, to be sure, but no storms.
All right. One last thing before we get onto the meaty news of the week here, which was Halloween last night. Are your kids still trick or treating? I mean, MK's in college now, and
MK went to some, a bunch of her friends did something. They had their own little party or whatever, and Marty went over and looked at some other people's parties, and he didn't really, So they're not going around knocking doors anymore, which I think is good. I think it's, that's one of those ones. It's like, the parents need to tell kids, when you get past about 12 years old, you don't need to be trick or treating, right? That's for little kids. That's not for you. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, our neighborhood is really. I've seen this dramatic shift. We've been in this house for 19 years, so we've gone from 50, 60, 70, whatever, plus kids, lots of teenagers in the past and little kids and stuff like that. But the neighborhood has changed and, people have gotten older. A lot of the young kids have now grown up and they're off doing wherever, off to college, and maybe they're married by now or whatever. So, I don't see a lot of little kids. I don't see a lot of, public school level, age kids in my neighborhood anymore. And so I was coming back late in the afternoon yesterday and I'm like, oh yeah. And I saw some people walking around and it was still a little bit daylight. So it was, a little after between 5 and 6 or whatever it was. But I never saw them come to the house, and I just waited and waited, I'm like, my duty is to do that. And I'm like, I'd rather be doing something else. So I have my doorbell cam, I bring it up on my iPad and I'm watching that thing, no activity. I went upstairs, I was downstairs. I went upstairs to kind of look out I think it was almost 8 o'clock or whatever. Look, and I saw a truck or something across the street with its lights on. I'm like, is this one of those parental follow-on things? And I waited a little bit and I saw some little flashlights across the street and I'm thinking like, okay, let's see what happens here. But, nothing. I mean, they just kind of kept going down the street, but they stayed on that one side of the street. So I think we had 5 or 6 trick-or-treaters in the neighborhood, but none came to my door. Right.
Wow.
So I even put this question out on Nextdoor, which covers a fairly vast swath of this area out here. And yeah, we had 0s, 3s, 5s. There are a few people that had 30 to 40 people, very few. But I did see some things about somebody says, put a bowl out and a note, of candy, refilled it at 7 o'clock. Between 7 and 7:20, somebody stole the bowl. It's like,
stole the bowl.
Yeah, it's like
wow.
How petty can you be to steal the bowl of candy? And just stuff like that. There is some place in Damascus. Somebody reported from Damascus that they've got some kind of path or whatever, and that I guess they do it all up, and they think that there could be, 1,000 kids or something. It's one of those things that attracts people, right? So
my friend had he lived in Fairfax, and it was like a townhouse community. It was like garage townhouses. So a lot of the people like made their garage into, House of Horrors or whatever, fixed it up for Halloween, however. And so there, and that's generally younger families in those kind of places. And so, it wasn't 100, but it was 50 or 70, and they would all go around and check out each other's, displays and, compare and contrast. And so that was pretty cool. I mean, they, I'm not really a big Halloween guy, but they did a good job with it in that neighborhood.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate people who actually, they put the effort out and they do something fun, and kids in the neighborhood enjoy it. Because I can remember, did I mention that couple that had the claw machine before? Okay, so this is the last thing I promise you that I will mention, and we'll move on. So I was listening to a podcast, and there's this couple, and they haven't been able to have kids, but they're in Utah somewhere, and the husband bought a used claw machine, and then he figured out how to rig the claw machine so you could and they filled it with candy so it would actually grab. You wouldn't have the struggle to actually try to grab and drop it in. And now he's gone to some kind of vending machine thing or whatever, but they're up to like 800 kids are showing up on their doorstep every year. And she says, we don't have any kids, so this is the thing they budget for. They basically just buy all kinds of candy and just have this there. And that's a marvelous thing to be able to do that. It's like I tried to put that out. I don't know, this area, it's like somebody probably would steal the machine.
It's they say it. But the other thing is like, we're coming back around to where people want kids, right? We're at the very start of the cycle, but people are starting to say, yeah, that was, that does not necessarily make you happier to not have kids.
Right.
So,
Well, and so segue for that as we move into news is that there was a story about Hong Kong is now joining other countries, and they're offering $2,500 if you will have a baby, and then they will give you other government subsidies. So now this is Chinese controlled. China and their restriction. People are finding in Hong Kong because of the crackdown and things like that. Western businesses have been leaving Hong Kong in droves. There are now more Chinese-based headquarter businesses in Hong Kong than from other countries, which has not happened before. This is the first time in history it's happened before. But they're now starting to think about, it's like, we don't have, our population, has been dropping like a stone. I mean, the birth rate has been dropping. So they're doing what a lot of other countries are doing. They're trying to pay. Now, it usually only had a minimal impact in all the countries where they've tried to do this. It hasn't been enough of an incentive to do that, but this is still, I think we've talked about this, from time to time, is that the world has got a population problem going the other way. Think about all the zero population growth people from the 70s and whatever. This is somewhat coming to fruition in the sense of, okay, you're getting what you wish for, but it's going to have very harmful effects on the world overall. Right. If you don't replace the people that are dying, this is a problem.
And you need youth. You need young people, right? That's who works. That's who creates. That's who pays the taxes that support the older people. You support this whole school industry that we've built and we're not going to ever walk away from. So it's important to these countries. It's a whole sorts of there's someone, maybe it's Hungary or Yugoslavia or somewhere over there, where if a mom has 2 babies, maybe they're exempt from taxes for life.
Oh,
so that's a
yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, they're playing with all kinds of policy, tax policy, all kinds of things to try to spur this on, because they're realizing that there's a problem here, with all of that. So it's just it's a problematic thing. I mean, our birth rate is falling too, but not
below replacement now.
Yeah, but right. It's not as precipitous as it has been in Asia and a lot of European countries, which are going to be a big problem down the line. I mean, I have lots of people out there, lots of my friends who complain about, I hate self-checkout and I hate those kiosks at the fast food places and stuff like that. It's like, this is part of the reason that we're getting there, though, is that you can't find the workers. I mean, you're not going to have 16, 70-year-olds sitting there doing, flipping burgers for you and stuff like that. This is not going to happen. You can't find enough of the young people to do the jobs that have been traditionally done that way. It is going to more of those kiosks. You're seeing more, they're testing robots in kitchens to do things. I think it's a White Castle or whatever it is that has Flippy, the burger flipping robot. And, they're just trying all kinds of things to try to, just try to fill the holes here in the system. But, we have a service economy that's got a problem. We can't find enough people to work in a lot of these places. So, people wanted their modern conveniences of a lot of, fast food and a lot of this casual food. Yeah, you may not have enough people to supply that. I saw something somewhere where somebody was saying that, I think 2 of the local restaurants they couldn't go into the lobby because they didn't have enough staff for that. Like a Starbucks or a Burger King. I experienced that in Arizona, but this is becoming more commonplace.
Yeah, like George Mason, a college, right? So you order food, like you order DoorDash or whatever. It comes from they have a little robot that drives it around to people.
All right, one more comment from Bob here that I missed.
Yeah. So Louisiana, it's 30. There's 5 classes, and there's 32 teams making in each class. So you have teams in there with losing records and all kinds of crazy stuff because they give everybody a bite of the apple. Yeah, and that's just. They also now at the top level they have a thing for private schools, so it's just the top level.
All right, so as I promised, we spent half the show on this other stuff, but what the heck, and it's a good conversation nevertheless. So you were mentioning this whole thing with Joe Biden and the checks and all of these things, and I wanted to mention this partly, not just because you mentioned it, but also because, Biden trying to deal with this was talking about how he bounced checks when he was younger and how hard it is to get a hold of those kinds of records and stuff like that. And I'm like, what is, where is he? Where's the whole, how does this all match up in reality? And, he wasn't funny. It just seemed like it was more senility, just weird stuff that he's trying to throw in there. And then he tries to attach that to, we're eliminating junk fees, because it costs so much to bounce a check and all this kind of stuff like that. And yeah, Joe Biden and reality still seem to be, strangers.
Right. And here's the other one is like, there's a story on the front of Dead Tree Post this morning about Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, right, which is under a court challenge, quite likely, or quite highly possible it could be closed, would be rendered unconstitutional, and close the office, right? One of the things they do is they harass the payday lenders, right? They have all kinds of things they try to make up and go after payday lenders. Okay, well, on the other hand, they want to scrap the junk fees, which is, how banks make their money. You may not like it, right? But that's the bank lets you run your checking account, like all your financial transactions through the bank, right? You have your checking account, you have your debit card, you're going all over town spending money, right? And they're making all these transactions happen for you. They don't do that for free. They do that, for a reason and to make profit. And the profit comes, from, lending the money people hold with them and from fees, right? So they want to take away the fees and they want to take away payday lending. So if you don't have good credit, which a lot of people don't, and a lot of, what are they, like 70% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck in Joe Biden's wonderful economy, then, how do your car breaks down? How do you pay for it? What do? You just quit your job because you can't get there anymore? You have all these things going on and there's no like, how do we let these people access credit? How do we let people how do we create banks? And their thing is, oh, well, let's just set up a government bank. What could go wrong, right? So, that's they wanted to run it out of the post office. It's like the post office cannot deliver the mail, and you want to give them in charge of banking. So, there's all these kind of things that like they don't see that it's like it's like we are talking about earlier. It's an emotional approach to governing, right? They think that payday lender people getting exorbitant payments and they can't repay and all this stuff. It's like, well, the way that actually works is if you take out a loan and you pay it back quickly, then it's not exorbitant fees, right? They charge you a fee for getting, for providing this service, which is kind of a risky service. But the fact is more than 90% of the loans they make are paid back on time. And, there's the charge off rate is like 6 or 7%. And the charge off rate for commercial banks is about, 5 or 6%. So they're just a little bit more charge offs you talk about 1% or 2% of that kind of money is a pretty good bit of money. I'm not trying to undermine that, but they're in the same situation, right? They're not any more liable or less reliable as lenders than the people, the customers of the banks who are considerably better healed.
All right. We got to throw in a couple. One, this comment, I assume you know what this means.
Right. So John Curtis is a high school in Metairie that has won 30-something state championships. And it's a Christian high school. The coach is John Curtis Jr., who's been the coach there. I think he just won his 500th or 600th game. I think I saw somewhere. But they're one of the best high school programs in the country. And they put out good players that go all over the country and play. And so John Curtis and the Catholic high schools in New Orleans, who can recruit or not, bound by any of these rules, there became a movement in the state to sort of let them have their own state championship. So, they're sort of closer to being pros than the rest and to, make it fair. And there's misgivings on both sides about that.
All right. Here's another comment from Bob.
That's right. So what he's talking about, Deb Haaland is the Secretary of Interior. She's Native American. She she's part of this administration that opposes this. But I mean, Indian tribes run a lot of these payday loan companies, and their people certainly rely on it for financing.
Yeah, the thing is, this is what there are a lot of fees out there that I really hate. But I mean, this has become a very fee for service kind of world. We've seen, airlines have been throwing on fees for a long time. The banks have had these fees, as you pointed out correctly. I mean, they make their money by loaning the money that, that we put in and put on deposit out at a higher rate, making money there and expanding businesses and things like that, which is good for the community. But and these, bounce check fees and all these other kinds of things, but that's also a steady stream of revenue. The liberals, they go after these things as if, these rates are so exorbitant that they have to be reined in, that they have to be eliminated. But, processing all of this costs money. There's a cost to this that, that people who have not been in business don't understand. And this is the problem with politicians, is that a lot of them have not run businesses, especially people at the top like that. And so they just think, big business charging too much, we've got to either get rid of them or lower the fees. Well, when you do that, they're going to have to do something else. You get free checking at a bank if they can make their money through other sources.
Right.
But if you cut off their revenue sources of fees, you're now going to have to pay a fee for a checking account. Okay. Right. And then don't complain about that fee, your $8, $10, whatever month fee for your checking account that used to be free. Well, if they can't charge $25 or $30 for the bounce check type of thing and some other services, they've got to make that money back somewhere else. And exactly who is paying for the cost of the money when you bounce a check, who's collecting that? I mean, if they right. can't collect that money, who's on the hook for that? And in the meantime, there's a cost of money. There's all of right. these things that it drives me nuts. It's kind of like, oh no, they can afford to do this because they make so much money.
They're big banks. Just stick it to them. It's like, oh, you stick it to them. They're not going to be big banks anymore. They have to get that somewhere. So, yeah, it's hard to feel. It's hard to get people to feel sorry, but you can't make policy on who they feel sorry for, which is what the Democrats want to do, right? About all this stuff. They want to make policy based on, it's like the Israel Hamas. They feel more sorry for the Palestinians. So even though they go in and they, rape babies and kill old ladies and, just some of the most heinous crimes in modern history, well, but we feel sorrier for them than we do the others, right? I mean, that's literally where they are. So, which is really, it's exposing some irresponsibility that all fair-minded, decent-minded people should be able to see.
All right. So now that we've moved to the Middle East, so what's going on? I mean, what's the situation with Netanyahu? I mean, is he on the hot seat? Are people looking at him closely? I mean, he's been trying to deflect a little bit, it seems, in terms of why this happened. Pull back a little bit about who's to blame for that. I mean, he is the man in charge. There's been a lot of criticism heaped on him. Can he lead Israel out of this? Can he survive this? Or is there going to be enough blowback on the other side here that it forces him out and somebody else winds up taking over the government, in the not too distant future?
No, he's blessed by incompetent opponents, right? So, I mean, if replace him with what is a fair, reasonable question. He's always, he's never been very popular. He's been more popular in the United States over the years than in Israel. And so, is he he's always on the hot seat, right? If they come up with a way to dispose of him, they will. But, right now in the midst of war, he's been, he's spoken with moral clarity on, what happened and what they should do about it. And I don't think right now that they're going to change. I mean, it could happen this afternoon since I said otherwise, but I don't think that they're going to change. I think they'll stay with him. Foreseeable, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I mean, I think it would be to the, especially right now during what they're involved in right now, it would be a huge mistake to take out Netanyahu. I mean, it would make Hamas happy probably.
Yeah.
I mean, because I think Bibi's a hard liner. I mean, he's made
Right.
he's made it pretty clear about what they're planning on doing, and they have they've been doing things which is upsetting all the pro-Hamas, pro-Palestinian people out there. But once again, as we have said before in this program, it's like, excuse me, who attacked who and on whose turf
Right.
here exactly?
Right.
Who started this? Israel, did not start this. Hamas started this thing, and they brutally killed a bunch of young people at a concert. This was, and then they rolled on from there. And yet, you still have the Squad and other people that are still like, oh no, just like this, we have to stop this,
ceasefire. It's like,
Israel is
wrap some stuff
murdering
up
innocent citizens.
Yeah, that's true.
That's true.
I think he's probably the one, the most capable one that they have right now, though. I will say that.
And that's the problem is just that, as Bob is saying, it's like that Israel has got a bunch of generally largely inept leaders, so they don't really have the guy that you can count on that can govern, and get a majority, and win these elections and actually be able to govern effectively, over a long period of time. I mean, how many elections have they had in the last couple of years? What, 5 or something like that? I mean, it has been very tumultuous for them, but the change now would not be a good idea. He's the best of a weak bunch, right?
That's right. And that makes you the guy, right?
Yeah, that makes you the guy. I mean, it's like, it's like a lot of other things in this world. Sometimes it's like sports. I mean, you've got 3, not so hot quarterbacks. Well, this is the best of the bunch. He's probably not going to win us a lot of games, but we don't have anything else, and we don't have any other trade options or anything like that for now. So, hey, that's the guy we got. That's the guy we'll play, and whatever.
One of those coaches said, if you have 2 Spurrier, right? He said, if you have 2 quarterbacks, it means you have no quarterback.
Yeah, that's a system that doesn't work, right? and yet teams, sports teams have tried more of that kind of thing all across the board than anything else. I was like, no. In general, I think history has proven it doesn't work.
Yeah, you got to find one. That's right.
It's not a winning strategy. So, and I think we've touched on this a little bit last week because we saw this, but is it not getting worse than the rise of anti-Semitism on college campuses?
Well, it's exploded after this. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like really everybody came out and showed their cards and ripping down those signs and rallies all across the country on college campuses. As usual, when it comes to college protests, it's the case is incoherent, completely incoherent. They talk about decolonizing, like they're not the colony. They don't have the right to it. Like Jews have been in Israel for like at least 3,000 years. Okay. So you say, oh, they're on somebody else's land. No, they're not. They're on the only land in the world that they can remotely claim is their land, right? Everyone else treats them as foreigners, interlopers, money grubbers, whatever, but in Israel, that is a land for the Jews, right? The Jews are really generous about how they handle that. They let other people live there. They let other people participate in their politics, right? There's Arab members of the Knesset, right? But, it's a Jewish country. They're not going to do things that make them not Jewish, right? And the other thing is all this is the front anyway. The Palestinians don't give a rat's patootie about that. What they want is all the Jews dead, right? If you listen to what they say, they just want to kill Jews. I don't know. I've been thinking about this. I've been haunted by this. I don't know if you saw this, but there was a tape that made its way around of he killed this woman and he took her phone and he called home with the phone and he calls his parents and the guy is just exuberant. I killed 10 Israelis with my own hand. I killed 10 Jews. I killed them myself. Like, Papa, aren't you proud of me? And he's like, yeah, Allah Akbar, and then he tells his mom, and his mom's like, when are you coming home? And so the part of it is like the sort of the banal of, I want my family out of trouble, that kind of is international. I want my son out of that hot situation over there, even though like he's calling you and he's looking at it as like the highlight of his life, that he has done the thing he's on earth to do by killing 10 Jews. Okay. So you cannot reason with that ideology. You certainly cannot turn over a country to that ideology. Right. So, they don't want, freedom in Gaza. This is not the American Revolution where, remove our constraints to pursuit of prosperity. Right. This is, I want that because they are Jewish, because they are of this faith and this nationality or whatever, however you want to put it, I want to kill them dead. Okay. So, Israel has no business trying to reason with them, no business trying to negotiate with them. All you can do is stop them, stomp them, get them, make it where they're incapable of hurting you again.
Yeah, I mean, I've struggled with watching people talk. They do the whole Allah Akbar, and they'll may God be with you and peace be with you and all these kind of things. And I'm always just like, wait a minute. I mean, are you trying to tell me or tell the rest of the world that your God actually approves of this action? That this is that your God actually is telling you that it is okay to exterminate the Jews? That this
that you
this
should not just okay,
right,
but your duty
right.
to kill the Jews.
Yeah. So this I find to be, I can't fathom this. This was really hard for me.
Yeah. Thanks, Bob. Good luck with that. It's a little easier in southern Mississippi, but not a lot easier, right? Because when you're 18, you're looking for ideas to sort of challenge the thinking you've been brought up with, right? And so here's one that, your parents clearly don't think that it's right what the Palestinians did. Oh, but you don't know the whole story. Me, college guy, I've heard the whole story, so I know, right? The whole story is they want to kill them because they are Jewish, right? Yeah. The thing that you heard on TV was the right thing this time.
Now, I'm going to make the assumption, and you can correct me or Bob can correct me, that at least where he's teaching, it's not as bad as it would be in the Ivy League, right? In terms of what's going on there. That if there is any anti-Semitism, it probably is going to be a lot smaller in scope than it would be in the Ivy League and things like that. I'm assuming he's in a more conservative area.
Yeah.
And the students are a little bit more educated or better aware of this kind of situation than following kind of all the leftist tropes.
Right. Yeah. Bob said in southern Mississippi. So it's where he teaches it. And so, yeah, it's a more conservative area. It's weird. Like my sister taught it in southeastern Louisiana for a long time. And she talked about all the students being conservative. So, maybe down south, it's a different situation. Right. So, I don't know, but these protests have been, there's been some in Texas, Georgia, Florida. So they've been all over the college campuses. It's right. Tulane, public Ivy. Yeah, it's basically, I don't know how public it is, but Tulane's one. Also the other thing about it is like, so Tulane, NYU, University of Chicago, Hunter College, all schools with large Jewish enrollments, right? And yet these protests. So, I don't know. I guess you saw the best one I've seen on this though was the University of California system. Did you see this? So the Muslim Interfaith Council, whatever, teachers who teach comparative religion and stuff like that, and sociology and whatnot. They have this association. And they're like, after the attacks, the University of California system put out a release from the top dog of it, the chief regent, that said, we condemn anti-Semitism, we condemn hatred, we condemn the attacks, we condemn the violence. We condemn by the terrorists, right, who did this, right? So they came out and said, we demand that you retract that statement and apologize for calling them terrorists and center their concerns over colonialism and apartheid and all this stuff and put things in. And the guy wrote back and said, I guarantee you that we are not going to do that, period, full stop. So, there's a sane person out running the University of California system right now.
That's amazing. I mean, the other thing too that happens as a result of this, I think, I can't remember the person's name, but somebody pulling a lot of monetary support from Harvard or something like that because of the anti-Semitism. I mean, they're a Jewish family. I mean, this also should serve as a wake-up call to traditionally liberal Jewish families that, hello, you may have been educated there, you may have sent your kids there, but there is a lot of anti-Semitism at the schools you've been pouring tens of millions of dollars into.
The Louders pulled out of Penn the other day, right? The Estee Lauder people pulled out of Penn. There's a lot of Jewish families saying we're not giving zillions of dollars to these colleges anymore. We're reviewing it. It's Columbia, Harvard, Penn, Princeton. They've all had problems with this, and they should.
Yeah, I mean, it's too bad that this is the wake up call for a lot of these Jewish families. This is not necessarily anything new to a lot of us that have been watching academia for a number of years and what's been going on there. But obviously, what's happening in Israel has really brought it to the forefront, and good for them to pull out this and stop supporting these institutions that are blatantly anti-Semitic.
Kill you.
I mean, you're after my family in essence. My family members, my extended family. In doing that, because the families here undoubtedly have some kind of extended family living in Israel. This is it's a very popular thing to shuttle between the two countries.
Right.
And all that. So this is maybe we're learning some things here. It does and will always bother me about these politicians that we have, the squad type of people that continue to defend the Hamas position, the pro-Palestinian position, and find ways of doing it. I think AOC went after AIPAC and some other things about what AIPAC does, trying to poke holes in AIPAC because they're on their heels. I think the squad, to a large, they've received a lot of criticism. How do you keep defending the indefensible? This is just really bad.
Right, I think you saw they got into it with Thomas Massey. He voted. He was one of the 10 people in the House who voted against the Israeli aid package. That's right. I've never understood it either, because it's it goes against what you expect in a lot of ways. But I think part of it's been, and there's a reason that a lot of Catholics are liberal too, is that they think that the leftists are who defends freedom, who defends the freedom to be unpopular, right? The freedom to say unpopular ideas, hold unpopular beliefs. But that's really, that's flipped, right? And at this point, the left is the side that closes off views, that censors, that bullies people who don't think like they do. I mean, they've really become quite fascist in their, So Massey, I was started in on Thomas Massey. He voted against this. And so, he's like, I put America over AIPAC. It's like, you know what? You play a little game, right, that you think is cute, and you end up being stupid, looking really stupid a lot of the time. And this is one of those times.
Yeah. I mean, in matter of fact, I mean, we have the chairman of the Maryland state, the College Republicans, is a young Jewish conservative, and she's a great individual. She came on, she moved into the area, at least we got to know her, got involved a few years ago, and has kind of gone through the different things. She ran the county YRs and stuff like that. And she's still, she's got a job and everything like this, but she's got a lot of energy, I think, and really tries to get around and do a lot of things and promote, conservative ideals. And it's great to see that, because we don't get enough of these young Jewish conservatives to come out there and kind of lay the record out and say, this is why. It's like, her parents are conservative, luckily enough, but they're just, a lot of them just will follow the liberal line of their parents and think that's it. Charlton says, I was able to think for myself. That's extremely important. Don't follow the mindset. Think for yourself. Examine the evidence. This is what I always thought that was great about Rush Limbaugh, was that he kind of laid things out and educated a lot of people. And a lot of people came on board to conservative ideals from all kinds of different backgrounds because they're like, oh, wow, I woke up. I realized I can think for myself. I don't have to follow my parents.
And how did they do it? How did he convince them? Data, information,
Yeah, right.
Not emotions, facts.
Right. Yep, that was it. And that's what our side does. We have data, we have facts, and we don't rely on the emotion and just, it's been, we voted Democrat for 50 years, so you have to too, and you have to carry on that tradition. Well, things have changed.
Yeah.
You need to examine the data and see exactly what's going on there. And if you look at the data of, what Republicans versus Democrats are in elections, you should be voting Republican most of the time or voting for a conservative most of the time.
Charlton's modest, but he wasn't. He would tell you that his son is a possible rising conservative Jewish star. He worked for Mike Johnson and is doing some of this stuff now. He's a really smart kid.
That's great. That's what we need to see. So, that was the other thing too, is that, have the Republicans put the Democrats in a little bit of a bind there of their on this whole thing about the funding package? Biden's been pushing hard on this aid package, but now the Republicans saying, well, if you want to do that, how about we cut the funding to the IRS from the Inflation Reduction Act, and that's kind of, I think that has put them in kind of this tricky situation for the Democrats. What are they doing?
Right. I think that the further point that needs to be made about this, and I think it would be a really good political winner, is if you look at a heat map of where audits are conducted in the country, okay, the thickest area for auditing in the country is the Mississippi Delta. The second thickest area is the Rio Grande Valley. Okay, so those two particular areas are known for what? They're two of the poorest parts of the entire country, right? The lowest incomes, lowest education levels, highest poverty rates, all that kind of stuff, right? So why, and if you look at it's like they don't audit anybody in New England, right? There's from, New York State, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, almost no one audited. Pennsylvania, very few audited. Washington State, very few audited. So why don't we shift all the auditors from the poorest parts of the country to some of these guys who actually might have some, if you catch them cheating on their taxes, you might actually end up with some money, right? They don't want to do that. They want to just add more agents and go after it. So I think one of the points we need to make is, just reallocate. You'll be fine, right? IRS, like we're trying to save Western civilization here. We don't necessarily need 80,000 more bureaucrats.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely not in favor of more bureaucrats, and I understand the general thing is that you kind of need to spread the audits. You want to have it kind of hitting different segments, kind of just as a test, but you don't overload one segment, and then you need to look at it and say, what is exactly what are we getting at here? I mean, if we go into the Mississippi Delta, the Rio Grande, what kind of tax cheats are we finding? People who are basically cheating by $300 or whatever.
Yeah, they're cheating because they do not have the money to pay it.
Yeah,
right.
So,
it's either that or food for my kid, and I'm like, come and get me, Uncle Sam. Right, I'm going to feed my kid.
In the meantime, people who are probably cheating the government out of maybe millions of dollars potentially with all their shenanigans, most of them skate by. It's like, this doesn't make any sense.
Right. That's right.
Yeah. So
Connecticut's the richest state in the union. Why is no one getting audited in Connecticut? Right.
Yeah. Right. And the thing too is that because of the low number of audits in a lot of these places with the super rich or the rich, is that it only encourages people to do more of these that's right.
That's right.
My chances of getting caught are like 0.01%. So
that's right.
That's a pretty low number. We're going to go and see how far we can carry this thing. It's just crazy.
Yeah.
How all that goes. How's just quickly too? I mean, your feeling about Speaker Johnson here after about a week?
I think he could end up being a really good speaker, and I think that it might be a good strategy for Republicans to start building their keep the House campaign around. Look, we got a leader who actually means it, right? And there's enough there for. He's for he's going to help the moderates on some things, right? He's not going to cut off funding to all wars and all these things that they extreme want to do. But he is going to make the deals the way we want them made, right? He's going to emphasize values. It's really interesting to watch how the left is marketing against this guy. I always make the point that people say, "Oh, we can't get Trump because the other side will just trash him," and it'll just be a whole thing of them trashing Trump again. Like whoever you put up, they're going to trash, and it's pretty much the same playbook. They're all Nazis and troglodytes and misogynists, and they hate women, and they're racist, and this, it's the same garbage about every Republican, no matter what, right? So don't worry about who it is. Don't worry about what they say because it's not going to change, right? So, but you have a guy here who at least so far is talking a pretty good game about what he wants to do and how he wants to do it. So I think if they can actually get behind him, and I think this is a pretty good first salvo to couple the Israeli aid with cutting IRS bureaucrats, because even if you are a member of Congress who is not wholly committed to Israeli aid, you're against foreign aid, you think we shouldn't be slipping into wars, you're not necessarily the most pro-Jewish person on the planet, right? The cutting bureaucrats part of this still gives you something to put a stake in. So I think that I think he made a good move there. And it's not had anything to do with Ukraine. So we're not having the Ukraine argument with this. It's just the bureaucracy argument. So that shows me he has a little touch, and I can see good things ahead.
All right.
I think the left's reaction tells you that they also see that he's good.
All right. I'm going to give you about a minute and a half to finish it off here. What do you want us to talk about?
Quick on the presidential campaign. Trump is our nominee. Pence dropped out. I guess Pence may be positioning himself to be vice president again, and I'm still not convinced that won't happen. Nikki Haley is passing DeSantis. I think that's of little consequence. I don't think anybody would ever seriously vote for either of them. And let's see what else we have on here. I feel bad for the Rangers and the Diamondbacks. Well, I feel bad for the Diamondbacks. I can't really bring myself to feel bad for the Rangers. But if I could, because they're playing a pretty good World Series and no one's watching, right? It ended up with two teams that aren't in media markets and are easy to ignore.
Yeah, I mean it's a tough go for them, but it looks like the Rangers are right on the cusp this time. Hopefully they won't blow it this time.
Yeah.
But I think they're in better position than they were the last time they were in the series. So it's interesting. I mean, for me, the Rangers, the old Washington Senators, so they always have my back. I'm backing there. So we'll see how that all turns out. And with Bruce Bochy getting another world championship, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, he's a good man. When they hired him, I as an Astros fan, I said that's a problem.
Yeah.
He's a very good manager.
But the problem is going to be for both these teams is next year is just this recovery period. There tends to be this issue with teams that play all the way through the series.
I think that's what happened. The Astros, we have played almost 80 more games than everyone else since 2017, a season of postseason games.
Yeah.
So, like all your pitchers are out there another month, your hitters are out there another month. Every year you're in it a whole nother month. You think about when's the last time the Nats had a game? You can't even remember that far back, right? Yeah. But these guys kept playing and playing and playing, and they're all high stakes, high leverage. You can't just throw your slop out there. It's got to be the best people. So you end up you pay a toll over time. This year we had one starting pitcher never appeared in a game. One was in 2 games, and then he was injured and lost for the year. So, that's 40% of your starting rotation essentially never pitched, right? So, I mean, it really hurt us this year. And we had Framber Valdez obviously wasn't as good, and some of the hitters were tired. So
that's what happened. All right, everyone. Thank you again for joining us. We had good conversation. Enjoyed your comments. Always appreciate that. Remember, as always, to stay safe and stay well. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. And God bless America. And we will see you again next week.